They say politics is the art of distraction, and we received a classic example of that last week with the Albanese government's war against grocery shrinkflation. Let's take a look.
You'll have seen it. A product comes out in new packaging, it's the same price as before, but the box feels a little bit lighter. It's called shrinkflation, and it's a trick supermarkets and food retailers use to charge you more when you're getting less. Price tags are meant to have unit pricing on them so you can make sure you're getting good value. But right now, there aren't any penalties to make supermarkets follow that rule. We're changing that to make sure you know you're getting a fair deal when you buy.
Albo's war against grocery shrinkflation is another political distraction. Albo tweeted last week, quote, "There is more air than chips in your chip packets." Albo also said that Labor would tackle shrinkflation via stronger unit pricing and that he will deliver Australian consumers fair prices, not dodgy discounts. What Albo failed to mention is that unit pricing has already been mandatory under the ACCC Code of Conduct since 2010, yet it has done nothing to address high prices nor shrinkflation. The shrinkflation Albo should care about is housing shrinkflation. Australians have been forced to pay more to live in a shoebox apartment or miles away from anywhere in a detached house on a postage stamp sized lot. As illustrated in the chart on the left, the average lot size for Australian homes has fallen dramatically over the past decade. Australian housing developers have also turned to micro apartments to fix the housing crisis. Meanwhile, tiny houses have been touted as a solution to Australia's affordability crisis. The reality of the situation is that for decades, Australians have been forced to pay more to live in smaller housing. That is the shrinkflation that Albo should be concerned about. So why is our government quiet on housing shrinkflation? It's because it's state-sponsored. Just last month, the New South Wales Productivity and Equality Commission touted higher towers, smaller apartments, fewer car spaces, and less storage and natural light as the solution to New South Wales's housing crisis. So where was the Albanese government's backlash against this form of shrinkflation? There was none. Why doesn't Albo push for unit pricing in the housing sector and for prices to also be displayed in square metre terms, similar to what happens in the US, where they display prices in square foot terms? Wouldn't that increase transparency for consumers? The fact of the matter is that housing shrinkflation has been sponsored through the federal government's mass immigration policy. The federal government has been busy force-feeding future Australians to live in expensive, cramped high-rises via the combination of extreme levels of immigration and high-density planning rules. The 2023 Intergenerational Report officially projected that Australia's population would grow by more than 13 million people over the next 39 years, which is the equivalent of adding another Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane to Australia's current population. Force-feeding so many people into Australia's major cities will mean that high-rise living will become the norm. It also means that shrinkflation will continue as prices continue to rise and dwelling sizes continue to shrink. As illustrated in the chart on the right, the Urban Task Force projects that 50% of Sydneysiders will live in apartments by 2057 versus around 30% currently. Meanwhile, the number of Sydneysiders living in a detached house with a backyard will shrink from 55% as of the 2016 census to only 25% by 2057. Put up your hands if you think that Sydney's housing will be cheaper by 2057 than it is now. Of course it won't be. Housing shrinkflation will continue as Australians are forced to live in smaller and more expensive housing to make way for massive amounts of migration. Anyway, thanks for watching. Tell us what you think in the comments. Do you think that Albo's grocery shrinkflation push is an absolute ruse and distraction? And do you think that Albo should be focusing on housing shrinkflation instead? I'll catch you in the next video.